Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on this I think this is our third live stream with minds.com. It's been fantastic. Sean has been helping host. Bill has been here for many of them. Bill's an awesome addition as well when he can get his audio functioning properly. We are joined today by Matt with Basta Records. Tell me if I'm not pronouncing that right.
Based Records.
Based. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So think based, BASED, but like a baster.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Matt is joining us, and I'm really excited for his input because we were chatting before the show, and he has some really interesting takes, not all of which I fully agree with, but he is Canadian, so we'll give him the I'm just kidding. He's joining us from Canada. I'm down in Florida, and then Sean is off somewhere, heading down, I think, to Texas at some point. So we're all over the place. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. Sean, thanks for setting this up. I'm excited to be here one more time.
Yeah, super fun. So we had a couple topics we were talking about before the show. Andy No and Ron DeSantis, and Matt actually helped found the Post Millennial.
Yeah.
So they took Matt, and you talked about this in the past, like when you guys signed Andy, there was a huge wave like from Antifa for a while. There was, obviously stuff online. We experienced it in person, like them coming after us in person. It was real. So like the fact that you guys had Andy and you hired him on and kept him on, it's been awesome,
The interesting thing about Andy and Antifa, the whole saga reminds me very much of the Know Nothings. Do you guys know who the Know Nothings are?
No.
So around the time, actually, of the Civil War, before the Civil War, there was a party primarily made of Protestant WASPs, for lack of a better term, and they called themselves Native Americans, and they claimed that they were very much against the Freemasons. They perceived a Masonic cult as running the country. They were anti-immigration, and of course, to them, all non-white people were, that included all the Catholics and included French people, right? They were nativist to the extreme, thus Native American, funnily enough. And that's what Antifa reminds me of, kind of a loosely organized band of extremely violent WASPs attacking a Vietnamese guy, and that's Antifa in Portland. And no surprise they had a success in court, and good on Andy for pursuing it. Good on his legal team for pursuing it, because they should, and potentially they'll be able to appeal this decision. I hope they can. Although if it's a civil suit, then they might not be able to.
Yes, so that was my question. So like what kind of suit? I heard from Andy a little bit. He gave me a little bit of the background, but so these were the two that assaulted him. The two of them. I mean, there were multiple that assaulted him that day, but these were two of the people.
Yeah, John Colin Hacker and Elizabeth Renee Richter.
Yeah. And this is like a civil suit. And, people say, oh, the U.S. is like lawsuit crazy. But I think in some of these cases, you have to sue, because we can't just accept that people can just go around, beating people up that they don't like.
This is classic lawfare as far as I'm concerned, and I personally am really impressed that they were able to bring it against Antifa. But there are pitfalls to bringing court cases against Antifa, it turns out, as Andy discovered, which was super interesting. I didn't fully understand what they were explaining over the course of a few tweets that I saw about this. Something about one of the lawyers saying that they were a member of Antifa, because that's crazy.
Really?
How? Yeah, that's my understanding.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It's shocking.
Yeah. The lawyer was, openly. I think she wore a shirt in court that said, "I am Antifa." The interesting thing here is again, right? It's very much a Protestant, very much a religious feeling, right? Very much a Puritan movement, just really violent, and targeting, in this case, of minority journalists.
Do you guys do you remember the movie Old School
Mm-mm.
with Will Ferrell? It was
No,
like
when
they
did
were in
that come out?
college. They were in college. They started like a fraternity, but they weren't technically a part of the college. But the thing was, it's like they were really good at the law, and Antifa, surprisingly, as people call them a terrorist group or whatever, and they're kind of like disorganized or whatever, but they really come together when they need lawyers. You ever noticed that? Like, they're very good at the law.
Yeah, that makes me wonder who is backing them exactly and what kind of knowledge they have, because
Yeah.
I've always kind of been curious, and I really kind of like Matt's parallel between Antifa and the Know Nothings, which up until today I know nothing about. But it is kind of interesting because you're correct. We know that Antifa is 99% awfuls, which is affluent white female liberals. Not always affluent, not always females, but always not liberals per se, but leftists, like serious ideologues, radicalized people who will do anything. That they actually kind of remind me of Earth Liberation Front from a while back,
Hmm.
in their willingness to just go to the extreme. But they're a serious issue, but they've gotten around a lot of stress from the mainstream media and stress from politicians and everything by using the classic postmodern approach of just being like, who are we really? Everyone can be Antifa. We're not actually a thing. But in
Hmm.
the case of Portland, they had Rose City Antifa when they
Hmm.
were actually an organization. They were organizing on Twitter before Elon took over, and they actually had proof that they were an organization that demanded attention, which I think probably gave their case some credence. But yeah, that the lawyer was wearing a T-shirt that said "I am Antifa." That's crazy to
Yeah, but
me.
they have so many like deep roots. It's crazy how
Yeah.
connected they are. I remember in Jersey, just like when they were coming after us for
Right.
the
Yeah.
events, they had we had lawyer statements. I was like, wow, like these guys they know what they're doing in the space, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, if the celebrities are donating millions of dollars to their legal funds, it kind of makes sense for them to kind of figure out how to collect that.
Yeah, but plenty of these
Um,
lawyers are also working pro bono, right? Because it's a means to an end. You represent this case effectively. You're going to be on the short list for, let's say, a judicial appointment
Hmm.
in 5 or 10 years, right? There's an actual reward, for collaborating. Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry.
There is a parallel sense of networking, right? We were talking before on on the preamble before we started live, and the issue on the right, especially in the states, is that people would sell their mothers and fathers for like an extra 50 grand a year or something like that, right? People are obsessed with money, especially on
Hmm.
the American right. And so, unfortunately, without a strict monetary gain, there's no way to coalesce in the same way. That could change, but I mean that's why you don't need a single person to back any of these groups. They're ideologues; they support each other. It's a
Yeah, but not really, because I worked in the 501c3 world. I worked in the nonprofit world, and there is not a lot of money. I mean, like the community organizers and stuff, but then when you get like a big backer, now all of a sudden you can start making some waves because you can start paying people and you can start, really putting time and energy in the stuff. So I truly think they're backed. At least from what I've seen. I mean, if someone came after me, like, let's say, for like legal suits and stuff like that, it would be unbelievably expensive for like a normal person to go through this. But all for whatever reason, when they're in court, they seem to be very well funded. I don't know.
Yeah, it does make me wonder, I have to say. And it's possible that they are just ideologues supporting ideologues, because we know that our higher education system, both in the US and in Canada, are heavily captured by postmodernist thinking, functionally Marxism. And what that looks like is all of these people supporting one another because they're all in the same in group and they all speak the same language. And this is why they're constantly changing the language in weird, unnecessary ways, like folks with an X for whatever reason. It's not even gendered. It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Using the term folks with an X indicates to your group that you are part of the group, that you know the most current whatever it is. I think there might be something to that. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a conspiracy, but I will say George Soros and Alex Soros do love to fund this kind of thing, and it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying it's definitely the case one way or the other, but it's exactly the kind of thing that they love. Could be. Don't know.
Yeah, but then you have the trickle down too. You have like
disagree at the end of the day, because I don't think that, every philanthropist would love to have the impact that Soros allegedly has. But the reality is you have many people in the United States and elsewhere who are overeducated, who have a dearth of economic opportunities, who care more about prestige than they do about money or about fame or whatever. And as a result, because who's the most powerful person, let's say in the Department of Transportation? It's not the secretary of that department,
right?
By the president. It's the top bureaucrat who relays all of the relevant information and statistics to the supposed secretary, right? Who doesn't really exert, the secretary, of course, doesn't even really exert all that much in terms of executive function, right? It's not Mayor Pete, right?
Right.
That's why it's not even fair to attack him for failures of the administration. I mean, he's not really even doing anything. He can't do anything.
Right.
But, the point is, the people who are going to work in government are the people who are going to participate in these violent actions against a guy like Andy. These people don't require that much money to do any of these things. I mean, there was a Washington Post photojournalist who took a picture of the January 6th protest, insurrection, whatever you want to call it. I think she tweeted famously that she won a Pulitzer Prize, but she was still living with her parents.
Interesting.
Right? So money is not but that's what I mean. On the right, we assume there must be money, there must be some kind of payment. But no, when it's a religious organization, as all of these organizations are, the point is that you're a good believer and that you're gaining power for you and your friends. That's it.
That's true. I think you might be right there, because the name of the game at the end of the day, after all, is power. We know that. And we know that because of what they say. And we know that because of rules for radical, which say to always accuse your opponent of that which you are doing. And the fact that they are constantly talking about how we have to dismantle these systems of oppression and power kind of seems to me like that's exactly what they're looking for. Could be wrong, of course, but that rings true to me for sure.
Yeah, I looked into Antifa a bit, and it kind of, if depends on how far you want to go back on it, but it hasn't been an organization that's been around for a very long time. And the only way for an organization to be around for a very long time is for them to figure out how to bring in some type of revenue. And, you can argue maybe it's an idea, and maybe these people in Portland and these kids in America have like a loose understanding of it and are claiming it or whatever. But I don't know. I think there's a trickle down when you see what the government's spending money on with DEI and everything else. And then you see the partnerships between BLM organizations and Antifa organizations. I mean, we saw that in Jersey, like they work hand in hand together. So there's government money being handed down to a portion of those organizations, and then they can then use that money to invest in the other organizations. Because I mean, I get what you're saying, Matt, but the issue in the 501c3 world is as soon as the money dries up, that organization no longer exists.
But it depends who, right? I mean, because for example, right, like the 501c3 that you were running, I think, was it Myth Informed? Was it the atheism thing?
Well, Myth Informed was one. I worked with a couple others. I mean, kind of like startups and things like that.
The point is, when it comes to a 501c3, a successful 501c3, you need people who are great grant writers. You need people who are connected to government, right? And even then, these the leaders of effective 501c3s are not taking the money for themselves. They're writing these grants. They're procuring the funds. They're distributing the funds.
Like BLM, right?
Well, actually, BLM is a textbook example of how to not run a 501c3, at least in Canada, right? Because apparently they embezzled some of the funds and things were not done completely kosher.
Yeah.
But that being said,
but don't you think they are investing in like the more radical types that are on the street? Now, if you listen to the left, which is kind of interesting, they're saying like a lot of those protests were the CIA and the FBI were radicalizing those protests, which is interesting. But there's definitely money in it. Like we saw some paid activists. I've seen paid activists, like people are just out there, paid for whatever reason, just holding signs or whatever.
I would just say, don't assume that a private investor is funding all of this stuff when the U.S. government could just as easily be doing it.
Sure.
Could be BlackRock.
Yeah.
Even BlackRock, because there's no straight ahead money making proposal from Portland becoming just a crime ridden liberal dystopia, right? It doesn't necessarily, you're not going to make a lot of money. There are lots of people who just dislike Andy. They just hate Andy, right? Because if you have an organized crime syndicate, I'm not even saying that Antifa is organized to that extent, although you hear things about members of Antifa engaging in racketeering and demanding that local businesses pay something in protection, right? And, whatever. You hear about some elements, but I'm not going to say that that's all Antifa or whatever. The point is that, no, people just kind of dislike them, and they don't even have to be paid for, to attack him or to harm him. These people take pleasure in just being.
That's true for Andy specifically. Yeah. But but this is what I'm saying, right? So like Andy's a good example. Andy, like anytime he announces, hey, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be wherever, he gets hounded, right? And then social media finds out about it or whatever. And then people will show up to protest them, right? It takes money to get from like, let's say you're wherever you are in New York and you have to go, Andy's in like wherever, those people that are showing up, like they're actually paying to go just to protest them, and it could be self-funded, but I don't know.
It depends where, right? But the other thing to remember is if you run a get out the vote 501c3 and you take government grants and you do a little hocus pocus and you're moving people logistically, like why is Antifa work in Portland, for example, and they haven't had the same success in Tampa Bay, right? It's not.
They did Seattle, or was it Seattle? Where was Chaz?
Yeah,
Chaz in Seattle, I think.
Yeah, Seattle.
Yeah.
The point is, you need a local pool of willing participants, right? You need it.
Well, and you need a moment too, right? That's what George Floyd was. That's what you COVID kind of, like you need the moment.
You also need a prosecutor who's going to let you off the hook.
And that too.
Like they had in Orlando, which is exactly what they had in Seattle and Portland, and also in Minneapolis and many of these other places where Antifa just ran buck wild in the summer of 2020. And that, that's obviously part of it. And that's why George Soros funds those things instead of directly. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe it's not directly funding Antifa. Maybe it's just bankrolling the campaign fees for these soft on crime attorneys who will just let them off the hook. Because that's a very, very clever way to undermine the rule of law without ever, dirty hands at arm's length, whatever, never touching it really, saying, well, someone rid me of this priest and all this other good stuff, and bada bing, bada boom, there it goes, because no one's going to stop you, because the Republicans and the right at large have no idea how to play that kind of game. It's very, very clever, but That's just my 2 cents on that one.
And it's hard to not say it's a conspiracy. Like there is that conspiracy that, to destabilize society, just have lawlessness. And it's hard to kind of look at what we're doing. And
some would say that's a natural consequence of a godless society, though, Sean. I don't know how you feel about that.
The godless society, no, but of the, appreciating everyone's rights and their safety, yes. And their business and their property and their.
But why? Why should somebody have the right to their property? Predicated on what? On what construct?
The fuck around and find out construct.
Like, a little bit more than that, I think.
If it is makes right in the absolute sense, then how can anybody critique Antifa?
Well, you're advocating that people should just be able to steal from other people and not face any consequences?
Well, if you have for example, Odysseus. Have you ever read the Odyssey?
No.
So Odysseus, he's celebrated in his time as a paragon of cunning and masculinity, and he leaves the Trojan battlefield and he conducts sporadic raids against random settlements, and he carries away treasure and he carries away women, and he does all sorts of things, and he kills a lot of people, steals a lot of people, frankly. He's celebrated as a hero by the ancient world, right? At the end of the book, he murders all of these house guests and who were invading his family's or his patrimony that he was trying to give to his family. So he was held up as an ideal, and in the vast majority of, or basically all non-Christian or non-Jewish societies, vast majority, right principle applies. All right, so why wouldn't it apply?
Why? Yeah, I don't know. I guess when you see the real world consequences of the soft on crime policies, when you're allowing criminals who get caught over and over, if you make a mistake and you're a criminal or whatever, and you figure it out and you work toward not being that, fine. But what our system's doing, it's like people that are getting arrested like 30 or 40 times or just letting them back out. And then they go out and do crazier and crazier stuff because they're just not facing any consequences. And, the whole prison reform thing is it's a tough thing because it's, like, what do you do? But it's also not fair for people who did nothing wrong to be victimized. I mean, that the Waukesha massacre guy, he ran over his girlfriend with his car, and then was let out on $1,000 bail, and then ran over 6 people and killed like a kid and 1 child, and so like it was clear that that guy should not have been on the street, but
right.
But it's like, so like to the modern, to the normal person, it's like looking at this, it's like, why are we doing that? And it almost rings of the, I think it's like, it's the whole argument for woke, right? It's like, you're just trying to be a good person. So they're just trying to let people out and giving them more chances and not getting them stuck in the system and stuff. But at the same time, like, there's real world consequences to just letting crazy people run free.
Yeah, for sure. Well, even without the influence of any kind of Soros-affiliated DA, you could talk a lot about some of the toxic compassion the left likes to try to pretend they're using, because you can look at the practical effects of what they're doing as far as crime goes.
Yeah.
People are fleeing Oakland because Oakland has become an insane cesspool of the worst crime in, I think, probably the entire country. And they're going, the NAACP, this is a really interesting story. A couple NAACP leaders in Oakland actually went to their city leadership and they said, please help us fix this problem. We're sick of this crime. We can't even leave our homes with any sense of security. And their city leadership was basically like, I can't believe that Black leaders in our community would posit this kind of ridiculous, bigoted view. And I was like, yo, you need to recall this lady because she is not going to fix your problems. And they don't care. They don't care what your color of skin is. They don't care about the victimhood hierarchy anymore if it goes against their overarching goal, which is to promote these ideas, even at the expense of actual literal human lives. And I think we could get into why human life doesn't matter. Matt?
Yeah, that's the point in a way, right? You
Right.
put it very eloquently, which is that, let's say, you know, let's say all of the money dried up for all of these 501c3s. Would the actions or beliefs of these people change materially? I don't know.
No. But there's a burnout factor. I equate it to, like, starting a podcast or, kind of working on anything where if you don't, like, there's some people, if they don't see results, like, they burn out, they stop doing the thing. And a lot of times that's driven by being able to bring in money to keep the thing going,
Right.
So but their beliefs don't change. It's a real burnout factor. So it's interesting seeing, like, organizations that have been around for years. It's like, I always ask them, like, where are they getting their funding? Rose City Antifa is one. It's like,
but they don't need money necessarily. That's kind of my point.
Well,
right? They don't have they don't have aspirations to be homeowners necessarily. They have aspirations to continue renting the same shitty apartment they've lived in for decades, and using their graduate education to the benefit of humanity.
Yeah, but it's the wild thing. It's like how, there are some really big name people, like, involved in those things, and typically they're kind of kept secret or whatever, but they identify with, like, the cause or whatever, and will donate. But yeah, regardless. But I know, Lydia, you had the other story with DeSantis, which I thought was good.
Laurel.
It's like it's like going after DAs.
Yeah, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And Matt thinks he's not doing enough, so I'm really interested to see what Matt thinks about what he has done. Well, so we had a thread from Will Chamberlain, and he's talking about why DeSantis suspended the state attorney. This is Monique Worrell, and DeSantis is saying she's suspended for dereliction of duty and incompetence. And then he lists, like, I would say, like 3 or 4 or 8 examples of her just refusing to prosecute crimes. And these are serious crimes. This is a man who killed his girlfriend. Okay, so here's a guy who sexually assaulted a young girl, 17-year-old, who fatally shot his pregnant girlfriend, and he was released after all of the arrests that led up to that shooting. And it's kind of stomach churning, but the mainstream media is saying this is only politically motivated, and I just can't with that. It's really frustrating to read, but at the same time, I see exactly what they're doing and I understand why they're doing it. But at the end of the day, you cannot tell me that you care about the people who live in these cities and also say that we need to keep prosecutors like her in her position, because you're literally just signing them up for more heartache and suffering and actually death, which is obviously not what we're going for. But Matt was saying that he hasn't gone far enough. So what do you think far enough would look like, Matt, from DeSantis?
Yeah, so I think that DeSantis has made a mistake by trying to enter the national political arena. I think that he was very successful in some aspects dealing with COVID in Florida, and people love him. People voted overwhelmingly for Trump, actually, and people even voted red relative to the rest of the country congressionally in 2022, purely on his popularity. It's a DeSantis factor. I would argue that he probably helped New York Republicans too, because of the snowbird effect.
Yeah.
So he did, people loved him. And the point is, going up against Trump, who effectively has a kind of a cult of personality, people are going to vote Trump. They're not going to vote anybody else. No matter Trump's people have misgivings about Trump because of the vaccine, and people love DeSantis because of his medical positions or whatever. But the point is, DeSantis should have focused on consolidating power in Florida, and not by getting into universities that nobody cared about and trying to make them conservative or something like that. He should have, from the beginning, and this is a little wacky, and I'm not saying I endorse this necessarily, but in my mind, the thing that would have made sense would have been to have consolidated power on a constitutional level in the state of Florida, to have allowed for him to run for office indefinitely. And that's the first thing he should have done. Anything short of that, there's just basically, the DAs, I mean, it's going to solve themselves after 20 years of DeSantis, don't you think? So that's the pitch.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was really good on COVID. I think he was really good on CRT. I think he was really good on the economy, with the small businesses being shut down during COVID. I mean, that was huge. Like, he definitely has bragging rights over Trump on that too, because, that we never should have shut down the country. And I think Trump's going to have to really answer to that. And he can blame Fauci, and he can blame, the quote unquote health experts, but at the same time, he was like behind that idea. But I agree with you though, Matt. I think Trump wins. I'm just kind of I like focusing on RFK because I'll let whatever happens on that side pan out, and then I'll vote for that. Like when Biden, wins, quote unquote wins, when Biden wins on the Democrat side. But I like RFK as the based vote right now. Like because he really is. He's the guy. And it's going to be interesting to see. And, he's running on podcasts. He's on, he has a strategy of talking to to people, actually, not talking through, the media and all that. And the media, the media hates him. But yeah, he's actually going to the people and talking to them. So it's going to be interesting to see how effective that can be.
So I've got to jump, but the thing I will say is this. The median age in the United States as of 2019, I just checked it, was 38.1 years, right? 38
Correct.
Years old, right? Relatively speaking, this is a fairly old country, right? I mean, actually, relative to history, relative to the rest of the world, it's a young country, only going to be younger by comparison. However, at the end of the day, Biden just has a certain kind of charm among older people. They just like him. Right?
Do they?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think this is the mass formation. I think there's a ton of people that think people like Biden, but I never met any of them.
No, relative to any Democrat, I'd like Biden. Relative to any other Democrat.
What I hear is he's not Trump. They don't say I like Biden. They say he's not Trump.
I'm voting for him because he isn't Trump.
Well,
yeah.
So enough. Yeah, it's like vanilla, right? Why do people like vanilla ice cream more than
because it's not rum raisin? Yeah,
I don't think anyone really likes Biden at all. I don't he's not a likable guy. He's been around forever.
He's run on being the reliable old guy, and for a time that worked. I think that worked probably up until about our withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I think that's crumbling. And I think the Democrats are starting to notice that.
Yeah.
I think they're going to slide somebody else in his place. I think it'll probably be Newsom. I can't imagine who else it would be.
That's why I don't think so, because Newsom's done a wonderful job, again, of consolidating power in California in a way that I think DeSantis probably should have.
But that's why I think the RFK thing is way more interesting than the Trump DeSantis thing. I think Trump and DeSantis should just come together and get it over with. And but this could be a showdown between Biden, because I don't think any Democrats really like Biden.
No, but RFK doesn't stand a chance. RFK is, he should be running as a Republican, if anything, and then maybe
or independent. Yeah.
Yeah, but the issue is, it's like, why does RFK think he should run as a Democrat? Why do older boomers love Biden and want to vote Democrat? It's because there's a certain brand associated with a nice Irish Catholic guy in his late 70s like Biden. A lot of people see themselves in Biden. And, I mean, Trump had a lot of success by reforming the Republican position on Social Security, which is why Trump was able to attract many new older voters. Because at the end of the day, this is all about money and government benefits,
Right.
or at least not entirely, right? But
it's a big part.
When you bring a guy like DeSantis on board, and the things he talks about are, for example, CRT, or the things he talks about are culture war issues, right? Unless you have kids, or unless you're highly online and very political on the right-wing end of the culture wars, neither of these things really affect you. And if you don't have kids, or if you do have kids, rather, you're part of a shrinking minority of people, right? And you're probably just moving to a red state regardless because of housing costs and other things. So anyway, okay, I have to run, but that's my but that's my take. Joe Biden, 2024. Not that I love him, not that I love his policies, but I do think, well, especially because he's been very America first on trade. Actually, he's been very tough on China. That's a conversation for another day.
The only thing I took away from this is you love Joe Biden.
Good note to leave on.
Nice work.
He's a better president than we've had in a long time. I mean,
oh my God! All right, we're gonna clip this and put this in the post.
Oh my God! Anyway,
oh my God!
Not a fan of Joe Biden. I'm just saying, the people they can't get enough of Joe. They want his ice cream. They want his rum raisin. What can I tell you?
Right, Matt. Before you go, how can people contact you, or like what's coming up for Based?
Yeah. So Based, we're gonna have a release with the wonderful 5 Times August. Sometime in October, we're actually going to be cutting some tracks with Chad Prather in a beautiful, beautiful studio here in Nashville. In late August, we're going to be releasing throughout the year for that. We have many exciting collaborations with different segments of the music industry, from merch to mixing and mastering, you name it. And we're extremely excited to put out a really high quality cultural product that does espouse fundamental American values, even classical liberal values, and we hope to change the culture, move the culture in a positive direction.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, Chad Prather. You guys have some custom music coming out, so yeah, I'm excited about it, man. But yeah, keep in touch, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I think DeSantis. It's tough, right? Because I understand why he ran. I mean, I think you kind of have to run. I know a lot of people are like jumping on him, like, why did he run? I think you kind of have to, but I don't know. What do you think, Trump DeSantis? Do you think it's going to be Trump DeSantis?
I think it already is Trump DeSantis, based on the fact that Trump spent more on ads against DeSantis than he spent to help candidates in the midterms. When I learned that, I was like, he is terrified of DeSantis. He's utterly terrified. And I don't care what the Trump fans online have to say about it. I don't even care what Timcast is saying about it at this point, because they fully embraced the Trump fans and they fully gotten on board with all that stuff. And I'm just like, here's the thing. There's a difference between getting the nomination and winning a general. And Trump's going to get the nomination. And the left wants him to get that nomination. And he's going to lose the general. Because it's going to be a remix of 2020. I'm sorry. And people don't want to hear that. But I'm seeing more and more people agree now. Mick Mulvaney was one of the people who was saying it first. My pinned tweet right now runs something like this. This is my biggest concern with Trump. The Republican primary will be about Trump and he will probably win. And then the general election will also be about Trump and he will probably lose. Pretty much a repeat of 2020. Trump is a turnout machine both for and against him. And one of the things that Tim Pool used to say before I left Timcast was that he didn't think that the 2020 election was stolen. He thought that it was gerrymandered by Democrats who went out there and were like, okay, so how are we going to tweak the rules to make this happen for our guy, right? Not technically illegal, not at all ethical, but at the same time, I think that was the case. And then I think because it was Trump, like Matt was saying, because it was Trump, people were very willing to get out there to vote against him. It wasn't necessarily for Biden. They would have voted for a rock over Trump because of the relentless media scrutiny of him. But at the end of the day, that's what happened. And I'm inclined to agree. That looks like it's going to be what happens again in 2024, which really.
Well, okay. So let me ask you a question. What if the laptop came out?
When?
Right when it came out. What if instead of the media saying that was all, and their intelligence agency saying that was all Russian?
What if it actually came out when it should have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do they call it? What do they call it? Midnight? What do they call it?
They call it kind of an October surprise, but it's
or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably would have altered the election just because if I recall correctly, something like 9% of Biden voters said that changed their view of Joe Biden a little bit, possibly enough to make them maybe sit it out or change their minds about him as a candidate. So that's another thing. And I will tell you that I don't know that I view that as election rigging, because when we listen to Sidney Powell talk about the Kraken, we know that she's not talking about the Biden administration or the Democrat administration or the deep state talking to big tech. She's talking about boxes of ballots that come in at midnight and get stuffed in when they're not supposed to be, and this kind of sneaky, underhanded, actually illegal stuff that she was ultimately not able to prove. And I think that, and Tim would have agreed with me at one point, I think that the whole laptop thing would be just another tool that they used to kind of rig the election in a certain way, but not in the way that people are talking about. You know, because there's different levels of rigging. And most people, when they say rigging, I think most people just assume that means they stole it. It was totally illegal, totally unethical. We should be able to prove it. I don't think that's what they did. I think that they planned it from a long way back. Pretty much as soon as Trump was elected, they were like, this can never happen again. And they started changing rules. And especially because of COVID, that was such a boon to them. And the fact that, oh my gosh, I just have to get this off my chest here. The fact that Trump handled COVID as badly as he did actually gave Democrats the tools to change these rules and make sure that he was defeated in 2020. And I don't know if Trump aficionados know that or recognize that.
Because of COVID.
Because of the way they changed the rules, because of COVID, everything was mail-in voting. And he noticed that it was mail-in voting because he told people in Georgia, totally screwed himself there. He told people in Georgia, don't vote by mail-in ballot, right? He recognized it was a problem. It wouldn't have been an issue at all if he hadn't turned the car over to Anthony Fauci. And even in 2021, in January, when he was leaving office, he was giving Anthony Fauci medals, and it just blew my mind.
Well, I mean, if you're going to get dirty, like if DeSantis, I think they've already kind of done this. Like, if you're going to play that game, like he was a Fauci support. I mean, Fauci was on television every single day.
Yeah.
Like everyone who was watching him on television every day, you know?
Yeah. I recently came across an old tweet. I think it was a tweet of his. I think this was before he was relegated to Truth Social, but there was a tweet when Trump was taking credit for what Fauci was doing. And I was just like, I mean, I don't know what more you need. If you remember, the problem that I think DeSantis is going to face is that people don't want to remember COVID.
Yeah.
They by and large just want to be done with it and never think about it again. But if they do that, they're going to get the exact same treatment that they got when COVID rolled around, because our dear Lord and friend Bill Gates is constantly talking about the next big pandemic. So I'm sure there's one coming down the pike right now, but hopefully I'm wrong. That's just kind of my spiel about what went on with Trump. I have so many complaints about him. I'm very, very pro-life. And the fact that he went after DeSantis for being actually pro-life kind of chapped my britches a little bit, because I was like, you are trying to take credit for putting the man on the Supreme Court, or for putting the people on the Supreme Court to help overturn Roe v. Wade. Okay. And first of all, I would probably give Mitch McConnell more credit for that, because he was the one who stood his ground on all of that stuff. When, Trump signed off on it and then Mitch McConnell actually made it happen. But as an aside, and that's kind of been his claim to fame. And I'm like, you don't get to make that claim to fame and also say that Florida is too extreme for having a 6-week abortion ban. I'm sorry, you just don't. So that's my other hill to die on. It's kind of, I don't know who I'm gonna.
It's such a
I don't.
losing topic. Like the
I
abortion, it's
know.
like
I
no
know.
one's right on it. Like
Yeah, I know. It's not a
I
winner.
think
I don't care.
it's a tough one. And but like they're forced to answer it. Like they're gonna ask Trump what his take is, and DeSantis, and they all have to have a take, I guess. And I typically try to lean more toward freedom. Like kind
Like
of
a
giving
libertarian
everyone,
stance.
more of the libertarian stance on it, where it's like, because there are certain terrible situations where the mother's life is in jeopardy, and that's
Right.
horrifying.
Right.
And that's horrifying for her too, because it's like, what do you do? But and then there's other horrible things that can happen. But it's a tough one, because you're never gonna win on it. Like no matter what you say, someone's gonna hate.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep going back and forth about it forever.
It's pretty much what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I think.
and that's I'm resigned. I'm just gonna do my part. My mom used to volunteer at a crisis pregnancy center, which they've shut all of them down in Pennsylvania. And Jezebel was saying, "Hell yeah, we shut them all down." Yeah, shows those pro-life people right. And the nation was writing about how pro-life people don't actually care about people after they're born. They do actually, and they show that by having things like crisis pregnancy centers, which you motherfuckers just shut down.
Right.
And it just that really bothers me. But I know that's not everybody's thing. It just bothers me personally, and I can volunteer and do my own thing as far as that goes.
Yeah, Libby put out a tweet that this is a while back, but she essentially came out on the legal, safe, and rare. And that used to be like what the Democrats would say: legal, safe, and rare.
Safe, legal, rare. Yeah.
Yeah, safe, legal, rare, or whatever. And that kind of was like it's like the most fair take, I guess. Because I guess, like women don't tell us what to do, but I get that too. It's like,
right.
The government, I just hate when the government's telling people what to do with their bodies. And that's kind of, where the COVID thing broke all of that down.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, I will say that at the end of the day, one of the things that I finally realized after really wrestling with the whole pro-life, pro-choice thing for a really long time was that we don't change this from the top down. You don't. You just don't. You absolutely don't. You have to change it from the bottom up. You change it by culture, which is why I deeply respect what Matt's doing with music. I think that's awesome. Yeah. Culture, incredibly important, and we cannot forget stuff like music, but we need to emphasize the importance of marriage. We need to emphasize the importance of having a family. Like, these are things that are falling apart even outside of abortion. People aren't having kids. They're not getting married. Men are very lonely. Women are alcoholic and very unfulfilled, and they're on antidepressants. Something's wrong. No government program is going to fix it. We have to go right to the heart of the issue. We have to talk to people individually and show them that we care about them, because at the end of the day, they don't actually care what you say if they don't think that you care when you're saying it. And that sounds like a very Democrat position, and I'm super, super conservative, and it's hard for me to say, but it's true, because you need to be compassionate toward people if that's what they hear. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting. A lot of it is driven through poverty right now, and that's another tough thing. And kind of what Matt was saying, it's like the organizations. I've seen a lot of organizations completely fold because they can't figure out how to bring in the revenue stream, because you have so much other things to worry about. It's like, your passions are one thing, but I don't know. It sucks that Andy lost that court case.
They'll appeal it. Hopefully he'll come up with some form of justice, but that's almost impossible to get, it seems like, in Portland. So might have to go somewhere else. Oh, you know what? I will say, on the topic of age, since Matt was saying that the median age in the U.S. is about 38, which is coincidentally what DeSantis is right now. You know what the typical life expectancy for a male in the U.S. is?
58.
77.
Oh, wow. I was way low.
Yeah, you were pretty low. That's a little negative of you. Wow.
That's pretty low. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like one of those where it's like 43,
super low, like maybe like median, but yeah. So the average life expectancy for males in the United States is 77 years old. Donald Trump will be 78 if he takes office again. And I got to be honest, I would rather put the future of this country, even just the next 4 years, because I have a bun in the oven. It's constantly on my mind. I would rather hand over the keys to this country to someone who's not about to die next year. Somebody who doesn't care about the next decade as long as they got theirs, right? You win your political battle. Good for you. Now you can die. And I don't
Yeah.
say that to be negative. It's just a fact. You're not going to live that much longer. You live on McDonald's and Coke, and that's fine. Whatever you do, I'm happy for you, but you don't have a direct line to the future. And somebody like Ron DeSantis does. He has
Yeah.
3 small children, and he cares about what happens. And my kid's life has just started now and will be going on hopefully for 70, 80 years into the future. And I would like to kind of set the stage and try to make that something positive. But I think that people don't take that into account. They just want their guy to win. It's very, very tribal in a way that I've only really seen from the left. And I will say there have been a lot of people who came over from the left and it really embraced Trump. So a lot of Bernie supporters came over because populist ideas, echo across both sides of the aisle. And I get that. The people who have recently converted from the left side of the aisle tend to have this incredibly tribal mindset. And they're willing to do a lot to get their guy to win. And to some degree, I feel like that's kind of the spirit we need on the right, because for better or for worse, we do truly view everyone as individuals and operate as individuals. But they're taking pages out of the left's book, and I don't like that.
I think what DeSantis is up against, though, he's up against an entertainer. I mean, this is.
Oh yeah, I know. He sucks all the
mean?
oxygen out of the room. That's true.
Like, Trump just is funny. People love hearing him talk. They love, he's got great routines. He knows. I mean, he's essentially doing stand up.
Sure, yeah.
There and, he knows how to read the crowd. He knows how to engage with the crowd.
Right.
He's a pro. He's been doing it for forever. And I think,
40 years,
for DeSantis, DeSantis wasn't in Hollywood. He didn't have like a reality show and stuff. So it's tough, especially when you're on television and a ton of people are watching you. Like, that's where Trump thrives.
I know.
Like,
I totally get that. And I completely understand his appeal and his charisma. But I will tell you right now that is not what you need to make actual good policies to fix a country.
I know, but then
I understand, I do, but it's just like, oh my gosh, can we focus on actual policy for a few minutes? And I know I sound like a nerd or a wonk or whatever, and let him have his turn. He deserves to be in office again. No politician deserves my vote. That's why I'm an independent. I will probably never register as a Republican ever again, because fuck that.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing about the Republican Party, I guess, you have Vivek too. He just turned 38 today.
Yeah. He's great. Does he have like a family? Is he married? Does he have kids? I don't know.
Yeah, he has a wife. I'm not sure if he has kids. I met him and his wife once very briefly.
He has like some really interesting ideas. I feel like he has a future for sure in politics. I don't know what as, but he's very interesting. I always enjoy what he's up to.
Yeah, he's smart. He understands it. And he's another one too that's engaging with the podcast and the Tims of the world. And
he's always somewhere interesting. Like, he's wherever interesting things are happening. And I think that's a really good talent for a politician. Kind of tap into that popularity. And he seems to have some pretty sound ideas too. I like he pitched the idea of raising the voting age, I think, or making people pass the civics test before they vote. And I was like, yes,
that's
absolutely.
not a bad idea.
That's a great
I know, but then you're gonna have like people are like, oh my God, like everyone has a human right, even if they can't read or whatever. And you know what I mean? Like there is that argument. And then you'll have some people that are arguing like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientists should run the world. And it's like, no, that's not good either.
Just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're going to be good at everything.
Exactly.
I think the sooner people realize that. Yeah, I think the sooner people realize that, the better we would have been during COVID, when they're like, well, maybe we should let the people who studied epidemics be in charge of our economy. Maybe not. Maybe that's a horrible idea. I'm glad that they're well researched. Good for them. And I did hear that they were studying COVID long before COVID actually, hit in 2020. So I think that's interesting. And I'm glad that they were looking at it. But at the same time, Nah, just because you're smart in one area doesn't mean you're smart in all of them.
The commenter says, terrible idea to bring back tests for voting. All you should need to vote is to be an adult who's affected by our government. Yeah, and that's the argument that you'll get a lot. But I don't think the ID thing is racist. I think that's
of course not. No,
totally
I don't think
like,
anybody's arguing that except on the way left.
Oh, there's a ton of people that argue that. Yeah.
On the right?
Not on the right.
Yeah, I was gonna
On
say,
the
I think that one's only coming from the way, because we're not actually racist on the right. We know that people of all different skin colors can figure out how to go to the RMV, DMV, and get their thing.
But the
So
left will
weird.
make that argument though too. It's like you should, all you need to do is be an adult who's affected by your government. You shouldn't need an ID either, which is now you know what I mean? Now it's like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I don't know, man. I will say too, though, on the topic, it's true that the policies that we put into effect obviously affect all of us as adults. However, and I will never stop emphasizing this, if you don't have a tie to the future, I don't know how much of a say you should have in what happens in the future. And I level this directly at people like Dianne Feinstein, who just had another fall. Poor soul. I feel bad for her. She should 100% be retired. I have seen people that frail. They should never be in positions of power at all. But she's just going to fall apart in front of our eyes. And she's past the average lifespan of a woman, I think, in the US, because she's 80. Isn't she like 85? She's insanely old. She's wildly old. And she's not well preserved. I've seen some old people be really, really well preserved. Oh, let's see.
90.
Yeah, she's that's insane to me. Yeah, born in 1933. Oldest sitting U.S. senator. And you know what's funny is that if she were to retire, she'd be replaced by Gavin Newsom. It'd be fine. She's trying to pull a RBG, and we see how that worked out for them. It worked out.
But it's
really well.
But it's like any job. It doesn't matter what your job is. If you're a lifer at it, I argue you're not really good at it, because you just, you know what I mean? Like at some point you're just like, oh, well, it's just what I do. You're not really excited about what you do anymore.
Yeah, exactly. There comes a point where you should hang up your hat and call it good and give it over to someone younger. And I understand the wisdom appeal. I really do. And it's true that older people are often very much wiser, especially between the difference between the wisdom of, say, the greatest generation and like Gen X and millennials, certainly not even close. Like, it's like we're not even the same species, because they actually have seen real difficulty. But no, we shouldn't be handing the reins over to people who actually have dementia. Like, that's not gonna work forever.
I know. And then the people running this country. I added it up. I think the people running the country is like, Biden and a couple others, and they were as old as the country, because the country is only 3 people old.
Right.
So
yeah. So wild to me. Well, I think we've gone for a full hour, Sean. It was great to talk to Matt. So we can wrap it if you want, or if you have questions, whatever we want to do.
Well, send us some super minds. I don't have any questions right now. The commenter just said that IDs are fine. People challenging ID laws are just being opportunists. As long as voter ID is free, it's fine. But no, thanks, Lydia, for coming on. We should have some more people. I've been in contact with some people
awesome
to come on and figure out. You're still doing your shows at 7-ish?
I stream them live at 7 p.m. every weeknight, and I will probably until I give birth. And then after that, I have no idea what's going to happen. Probably not a lot for me for a while. I'm going to be really busy. But yeah, I'm at 7 p.m. and I'm over at Trad Queen Story Hour, aka Sour Patch Lids, on YouTube. We have about 13K over there, and I would love to get more and get more interaction, people to argue with me, not insult me, but I do like to be argued with for sure. It's always a good time to engage with that kind of stuff.
And hit her up on Minds, and send her a super mind.
Yeah,
send
absolutely.
Lydia a super mind. Get on Minds, use Minds. But yeah, we should be. We'll have a stream soon. I don't have an actual date right now, but something will be coming up. But thanks again, Thanks again, everyone, for
Right.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys.